and welcome to SureenaSpeaks. And before I begin, my hair may look a bit more windswept. That's because I've got the fan on in the background. It is mega hot in here, so the fan is definitely necessary. I'm very sorry if you can hear it in the background, but trust me, it's like a furnace in here. Now on to this video, and this video is going to cover GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. It's something that you've probably heard about in the news, in your emails, even on adverts. So it's something that actually is involved in pharmacy as well. So I'm going to give a bit of an overview of GDPR, a bit of background detail about it, and then how it's actually relevant to pharmacy. So GDPR, it came into effect on the 25th of May 2018. It's a European regulation, but it is to be followed by UK specific law. Now, the way to think of it is like an improved and revised version of the Data Protection Act of 1998, which is something that you should have covered at university. So essentially, it's like a new Data Protection Act, and it's looking at ways of how we're using people's data and ultimately giving control to people about how companies use their data. We look at, the GDPR looks at how and why data is being used, and it takes into account two key words: accountability and transparency. And these two I'll talk about in a little bit more detail later on, but those are two really key words when it comes to GDPR. Now, after Brexit, it is expected that the UK's data protection regulations are equivalent to that of the EU. So there's three main definitions that I want to look at. One is personal data, the other is special category data, and the other is data processing. So let's start off with personal data. To really simplify it, personal data is about having information about someone and being able to identify them either directly or indirectly with that bit of information. Say, for example, the NHS number. So as another example, say you have somebody called John Doe. There's probably millions of people in this world called John Doe. So actually, by having that name, it doesn't really identify who that person is. But now say we have their date of birth or their address. With more information that we have, we're being able to create an image of who this person is and actually pinpoint who that person is. And that's essentially what the terminology of personal data is. Think of it like a jigsaw. If you have one piece of a jigsaw, you can't really work out what the rest of the picture is going to be. But the more and more pieces that you have, actually the bigger and the clearer the image is. Other examples of personal data, as mentioned, is your name, your date of birth, address, email, even your bank number, your bank credit card number, or even your customer online behaviour that you have when you're shopping. All of this comes under personal data. With regards to special category data, this is sensitive information about yourself. So your race, your religion, your political beliefs, your sexual orientation, what prescribed medication you're on, your mental health conditions, all of this comes under special category data. Data processing, it's in the name, it's how your data is being processed. So how is the information being collected? How is it organised, stored? How is it going to be used? Patients and customers have every right to be informed how their data is being processed. And consent plays a big part in this, either active or explicit. And under GDPR, it gives people greater control into knowing how their data is being used, who it's being disclosed to, and if a person asks a specific company for such information, that company then has to, within a month, give out that information to a person and no charge for giving such information out to them. Now, in terms of pharmacy, it's slightly different when it comes to consent, because consent is needed when we're giving a service. So, for example, giving a flu vaccine or a travel vaccine, or consent is needed when it's provided, it's something that's required by the NHS. So, for example, if you're giving an MUR consultation, you need to get consent. Accessing someone's summary care records, nominating someone for electronic prescription service. All of these services, consent is required. However, consent is not needed for then how that data is processed and handled. So yes, for the service, we're getting consent for that, but then how that data and information is going to be processed afterwards, consent isn't required for that. Reason being is because it comes to patient safety, and it's all to do with patient safety. It's all to do with using our professional judgment, our professional responsibility. All of that comes to hand. Anti-fraud checks, that even plays a part too. So whilst consent is needed for actually giving that service, consent is not necessary for the associated data processing and handling after. So that's how it's slightly different when it comes to pharmacy. On the PSNC website, they have a mnemonic for the word data protected, and it's 13 steps to help assist you and ensure that you do comply with GDPR rules. So I will put that in the description box below. It's actually really, really clever, so I do recommend that you do check that out. I mentioned two words earlier. One was accountability, the other was transparency. And companies need to be more transparent about how they are handling and processing people's data. And if someone isn't happy with the way that the data is being handled, they have every right to complain to the Information Commissioner's Office, which I'll call ICO. And the ICO are basically the guys that will investigate any data breaches that may have occurred. Now, if you've got a company that is dealing with a lot of data, they need to appoint someone as the data protection officer, and they will be the one to advise the company on data protection, and they will liaise with the ICO as well. Now, if it comes about that actually data has been breached, then that company must inform the ICO within 72 hours. And big fines can come up if it turns out that, yes, this company has breached data one way or another. So this GDPR stuff is actually really, really serious. It is really, really important because these are pretty hefty fines that they can get. So, for example, if there's any accidental loss or damage of data, data has been accessed by someone when it shouldn't have been accessed, or it wasn't stored correctly, this all comes under personal data breach. So there are many different principles to data protection. Again, I'll include those lists in the description box below, but I do really want to focus this on pharmacy. So GDPR, we know it's about personal data. With pharmacy, it'll be about patient data and how accessible it is. So different ways that we can access patient data in pharmacy is, for example, a person's PMR, their patient medical record, the retrieval system, even having a list of residents that live in a nursing home or a care home. These are all examples of what's known as a filing system. So this filing system, it's personal data, but it's accessible actually to those that are working in the pharmacy. Now, what are examples of ways that data can be breached in pharmacy? Well, there's many different ways. Say, for example, a dispensing error, so on handing out. So you give out the wrong patient someone else's medication. That's a breach. If you're putting in a patient confidential information in the wrong bin, that's a breach. The end of month prescription bundle, giving that to the wrong courier, again, that's an example of a breach, as is inappropriate use of smart cards or a third party having access to the dispensary when they really shouldn't. All of these are examples of data breaches within pharmacy. So how can pharmacies actually start implementing GDPR? Well, there's many different ways. A lot of community pharmacies have joined something called the GDPR Working Party. And what it is it ensures that all pharmacies that are within this party consistently deliver GDPR and interpret GDPR in the same way, so that there is that element of consistency throughout the sector. It'd be worth looking at the pharmacies that you're working in if they are part of this working party. Other ways which GDPR can be implemented is, for example, something really simple like ensuring that prescriptions or dispensing tokens or dispensed medication, that they're not visible to the rest of the public. Even if you look at the way that medicine is stored, I should say dispensed medication is bagged, labelled and stored in the pharmacy, making sure that it's not actually visible to the public. Keys is another one, so making sure that cabinets that contain sensitive information, making sure that they're locked at all times, that they're not easily accessible to anyone else, that the keys are kept on you. If there's someone who wants to talk about something quite sensitive, ensuring that there is a space in the pharmacy where they can have that conversation without being overheard by other people, for example, a consultation room. All of these are examples of ways to implement GDPR. Now, patients and customers, they might know what their rights are under GDPR, and they might decide that actually they want their PMR deleted or they want their MUR withdrawn. With consent, it's fine to stop that or withdraw that pharmacy service. That is fine. However, as a pharmacy, we are still required to store such information. So we still need to store information and services and medication that has been dispensed to that individual. So yes, they can have that service withdrawn, but we still need to store such information. So data has to be processed within a pharmacy, whether it's for repeat prescriptions, providing services such as MURs, NMS, flu vaccination, enhanced services, even when you're signposting someone or health promotion. For NHS management, data will have to be processed within a pharmacy. Now, what's quite interesting is, say for example, someone had a flu jab last year. You are allowed to send them an invitation to have their flu jab, inviting them to have their flu jab for this year, because technically that service is still ongoing and they consented to having their flu jab being done. So you can still continue, so they consented to that service. So you can give them out an invitation saying, hey, why don't you come in for another flu jab? But what you can't do is send them out an invitation for something that they haven't signed up for. So for example, blood pressure checking, cholesterol checking, because they haven't consented to that particular service. So that's why consent is such a big and vital part when it comes to providing services within pharmacy, and due to data protection and due to GDPR. And pharmacies have to put up a privacy notice, and this explains what will happen to an individual's personal information when they make contact with the pharmacy or if they use one of the services. So it needs to be hung up in the pharmacy and visible to the public. And that's GDPR in a nutshell and how it is involved in pharmacy. The big key thing about it is data protection. It's about how we can protect our patients' data, their personal data, and ensure that it's being used in the correct way. So I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, why not give it a thumbs up? Like, share, subscribe. Do also visit my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter page. And until next time, good luck with your revision and happy revisings!